when you start talking about, am I on? Here we are. When you start talking about 13 million or so API, or billion, you know, my reaction to that is, what wimps, we're just beginning. We really are just beginning. So I'd like to do something that makes you think differently about what it means to be a developer and the role you play. I am absolutely in agreement with you about the notion of developers being kingmakers. But the interesting thing about being a king is you have to pay attention to your subjects, otherwise they will revolt upon you. Think of it this way. If you're a hydrogen physicist, Sheldon Cooper, he's my hero. If you're a hydrogen physicist, you are taking a look at this vast complexity of our universe and trying to tease out the interesting patterns within it and distill it down into what people call the standard model, a set of fairly simple, small set of equations that describe the universe and all that emanates from it, and make those things perfectly visible to the rest of the world. Part of what that science is about is exposing to everyone. We as developers are the antithesis of that. We take excruciatingly simple things. Our Turing-complete computers and languages are mathematically very, very simple indeed. We bottle them up in these huge, dripping hairballs of code, and then we make them disappear. Because the best work that we do is indeed invisible to the rest of the world. So as we talk about here, these wonderful things in our craft, and I'm delighted we're here to talk about craft, because we are all craftsmen sharing stories. You must be humbled by the fact that the people using your products don't give a damn about what we do here. They could care less about these kinds of things that we talk about. And indeed, insofar as our craft peeks out behind the curtain, they get very annoyed. Because all of a sudden, we have shown them the bones in the infrastructure, the cracks, the dirtiness. And our goal as these kingmakers is to hide to our subjects the really nasty stuff that goes on here. So we're in a curious place because we are dealing with this growing complexity, and yet we must hide it. I like the notion of foraging. I think that's a great metaphor, because we are now in a period of tremendous abundance. I don't see any evolutionary discontinuity coming anytime soon. No Cretaceous Tertiary event coming on here. But rather, we are very much in a place where there is a tremendous amount of stuff at our disposal. And I think one of the things that's happening in the world of what you spoke especially is that we are sitting in a very rich primordial soup where there is tremendous opportunity for combining these things in novel ways. But please note, we've been there before and we will be there again. I sound a little bit like a line from Battlestar Galactica. Once was, will be. Hey, I'm not Baltar. For those of you who are not from the US, I hope you get some of my pop references here. The point is that we have seen this happen before and again, and we will see it again in technology, where you find this wonderful serendipitous combination of stuff from which innovation can happen. I look back to the time in the Industrial Revolution, there were sort of two phases of it. Look in the time frame of the very first part of the Industrial Revolution, where you had steam come to play. This is around the time when Babbage was talking about how he wished calculations could be done by steam. And you saw this explosion of companies, not unlike what you're seeing here, chasing after the opportunities. Same thing happened again in the Second Industrial Revolution, when all of a sudden there were great advances in chemistry and industry. The Bessemer steel was introduced at that time. We saw this wonderful explosion. And so this is an exciting time to be a developer, and enjoy it is what I'm saying, because we live in such a space again. And it gives us great opportunity to innovate in ways that we cannot predict a priori. That being said, recognize also that a lot of what's going on here is not going to exist 5 or 10 years from now. We talk about doing some really wonderful, cool things. I bet that Beer Act is not going to be around 5 to 10 years. Enjoy it now. It's kind of like the enjoyment of the indie bands, where you see people go after a particular voice and a sound and they love it, and you find these wonderful clicks because I know about this band you don't know about this, Dan, and it makes me feel better. This discussion we have around languages and platforms reminds me a little bit of that. But that's okay. That's part of the growing up in this primordial soup. Keep in mind, therefore, that something I said earlier, that as a developer, we are these kingmakers, but we are kings who, kind of like Alexander the Great was facing the problem of a growing empire. We are subject to the very empires we create. And so our world is going to change out from under us. I alluded to this morning talking about Facebook. And it is interesting with Facebook because it started out as completely PHP. When Zuck wrote his on his laptop, it was about 20,000 lines of PHP. It's grown to, according to the insiders I've spoken to, about 1.5 million lines of code. But they're reaching this interesting problem, and that as you observe, they're moving more and more to Java. They're victims of their own success. And now all of a sudden, it's not as adaptable as it once was. Although it's created an ecosystem of people on the outside who do some interesting things. Such is the nature of this kind of development. And therefore, I'd like you to have this model here. If you look at the grand scale of software development, there's a lot of stuff that happens kind of at the core of an enterprise that's relatively slow changing. And in fact, you can't blow it up because your business depends upon it. And a lot of stuff on the outside. Previous speaker talked about the stuff on the outside, and that's a fun place to be because you're leveraging all these APIs and other things that have been done that exist within this core. Not everything happens on the outside. A lot of interesting things happen on the inside. And as you alluded to, there's still a lot of software development that has absolutely nothing to do with the web. Software inside those cameras, software inside this video display. Walk up and down Las Vegas Strip and just play a little game which will annoy your non-computer friends and say, there's a computer, there's a computer, there's a computer. That stuff's all over the place. It may use the web as an infrastructure, the plumbing, but there's still a lot more going on there. Point is that enjoy being on the edge, but recognize, this is what I said earlier, there's a lot more out there that's not even seen by us. Recognize also that we're talking about a world in which there literally may be billions upon billions of devices. And that's why I say we have really just begun. Now this part kind of frightens me because we have this little project we're doing, not a little project, but a big project. We're doing my wife's involved in it. She's my partner in crime. Carl Sagan had a series some years ago on Cosmos, 13-part episodes talking about astronomy and astrophysics. We're trying to do the same thing with computing. And so we're working on an 11-part series for PBS with the Computer History Museum. If you come back at 5 o'clock, you'll hear one of the lectures about it. So it's one about computing and conflict. Very, very different lecture than anything else you see here. One of the things we've done is gone about the world and asked people questions about what is your human experience for computing. We're talking to people who are both developers as well as non-developers. And it's very striking in the difference of the responses that I get, because those who are inside the world of computing, they'll give me a very technology-oriented answer. But for those who are outside, they have not only no understanding of what's behind the curtain, they have no interest in it whatsoever. It is like me when I was growing up. I did not know or care how electricity worked, or the fact that I got water in my pipes, just it was there. Generations being born now is very instant. In fact, 12 hours ago, a friend of ours just had a baby. Woohoo. But that generation is being born not caring about what we do. So what is the role as a developer in such a world? Because the world increasingly uses what we develop, but it doesn't care about what we develop as long as it does good things for them. That, I think, is why we have to reconsider our role as a developer. We're a kingmaker in the place of a world that doesn't want kings necessarily anymore. They want to use this technology for the business of living. Now, I think that actually creates greater responsibility than without that model, in the sense that what we are creating here has, for every line of code, has implications beyond what we may consider. People are going to use what we're doing here in ways we could never conceive of. And that's both very exciting as well as incredibly frightening. You lose the notion of the APIs that are out there. part of this rich primordial soup. One of the things that I've seen looking at the history of development that I think we're going to repeat ourselves again on is that you find this growth at the bottom. We've seen operating systems and languages and the like, growing up to a set of interfaces, these APIs, that become important to allow a certain set of applications on top of it. But what happens because of the engineering forces and the commercial forces and the economic forces around us is there tends to be the growth of a dominant design in one particular place. This notion of dominant design is a common theory in economics and business development. But it basically says that we are on this wonderful platform here and we're all climbing various hills. Eventually people will climb a certain hill and other people start rushing to that hill. That's a notion of a dominant design. The world doesn't have to be designed around the way Google has done it, or Facebook or whatever, but that's what the forces of the market have led us to. And what happens when you start building up those dominant designs is all of a sudden you reach some stability, which is a good thing, but it also means you've locked in a way of building things that may have not necessarily been optimal. So what's going to happen in the space we're in right now is you're going to see the growth not just from APIs, but the growth of domain-specific platforms around sets of those APIs. And in a way, it's like repeating what we did in the operating system space. We chose an operating system because one was dominant versus the other, allowed us to play around in it. But operating systems don't matter that much anymore. They're part of the plumbing. We don't care about it. What's happened is we're worrying about the APIs. We care about it. But I'm warning you to realize we're going to find clustering around those of dominant design. And so it's not just learning about languages, but it's also learning about the application-specific architecture as well. Now, that means there are other kingmakers who may be out there saying, that's the wrong mountain we should be on. And I think that's why there's incredible opportunity in our place as craftsmen to go off and continue building those mountains, recognizing that not everybody's going to come to your mountain, but that's okay. That's what innovation is all about. So, back to this exercise that we're doing here with our series. Here's another thing I'd like to leave you with. Ask your friends or family about what you do and consider, how do you explain to them what a developer does? You probably have some shtick you give them for it. And ask them also, someone on the street, how does a computer work? And they're probably going to tell you, I have no idea, or it's magic or something like that, or you turn a button on and do this. What frightens me, and this is sort of a call to action, is that we are developing a generation that not only doesn't know, but doesn't care what's behind the curtain. And yet, the world does run on software. So what are we going to do as developers to open that curtain to the next generation so that they become the next craftsmen, so that they get excited about doing these kinds of things? You have a responsibility as a developer to be the best you can in your craft. And this is an exciting time to be there. But I would also urge you to say that as a developer, you have the responsibility to carry on your craft to others. So consider what you can do to share your delight in your craft to others and help them build that next world, build the next kingdom, if you will. Thank you all for coming here. I hope you have a blast for the next bit of the Unconference. This is going to be fun. Thank you.